Always wanted to use that. Oh. Okay. I just want to, I got 6:30, so I'm going to go ahead and welcome everyone out to the September 14th Board of Education meeting here at Derby Hills. First thing on our agenda is our call to order roll call with our flag salute. So would you please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next up on our agenda is our adoption of the agenda. Okay, we have a motion and a second there. All those in favor? 6-0. Okay, moving on to our routine action. Our first up is our approval of our minutes from our August 24th, 2020 budget hearing. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? 6-0. Next, we have our August 24th, 2020 regular meeting. Okay, got a motion and a second. All those in favor? 6-0. And last, under the approval of the minutes, is the August 31st, 2020 board retreat. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? 6-0. All right, thank you. Next up, we move to our citizens and community presentations before the board. First up is DNEA.
Good evening. I'm Joel Lattis, special education teacher at El Paso Elementary and president of DNEA. I have to admit that late last week, I wasn't really sure what I was going to talk about this evening. You know, I knew that I could talk about the MOU that was included in the board packet that we worked on with district administration. I also had thought about talking about the advocacy that KNEA had been doing at the state level as students return to learn. But I came to realize that the true work of DNEA over the last period of time since I came before you has been preparing for our students to return and working with them. And in retrospect, that seemed as clear as the mask on my face. So I reached out to DNEA leadership last Friday afternoon, and I just asked them about their experiences during the first week of school. I chose this group because it's about 40 educators and it provides a good cross-section of the members of the certified staff at each building. And so, as I'm sure you can imagine, I got a wide variety of responses. Let's see. I think it's pretty reasonable that teachers are feeling really stressed right now and overwhelmed. Not only are they working to educate their students, sometimes in modes completely new to them, and adjusting on the fly, they're also concerned about their health and the health of their families. They're also called to keep up with a constant flow of new information regarding our current circumstances, providing technical support to families and students. They're adjusting to allow for social distancing in their classrooms as best they can. They're adjusting to changes in their remote and physical classes as students have returned to learning. And they are adjusting to new procedures, such as wiping down and sanitizing their classes. Reading about these difficulties actually brought me back to an article that I read last week where Dr. Randy Watson had said that school districts are under the most stress that he has ever seen. But these dedicated educators also had multiple positives to share about their first week with students. Staff in updated buildings talked about how refreshing their new surroundings were. Colleagues being together again was uplifting. Overall, students and staff are adjusting to new procedures well, including wearing masks, which a lot of our teachers were worried about how that would play out in the classrooms, and they're seeing positive things. Teachers appreciate the extreme effort that custodial staff is putting into keeping buildings clean and sanitized. And it has been so great to have our students back in our classrooms. These positives are best summarized by this statement from one of my colleagues. We all are trying to get back into a school schedule and are working hard to provide the best for our students. It will be an amazing year. This situation and all of the feelings related to it are not unique to Derby. I think they're prevalent across the state of Kansas. What has been relatively unique about this situation has been the way that DNEA and the district administration has continued to work together to address these multiple challenges that continually arise in this situation. Thank you, and I would now stand for any questions.
All right, any questions or comments for Joel? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're going to move on to our patrons. And let me read something first before we start with that. All right, so the Board of Education has a strong desire to hear from its constituents. Please state your name and address, be brief in your remarks, and avoid repeating the views of previous speakers. I ask that groups with the same special interest appoint a spokesperson, and you are given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the board. Comments to refer to ideas, suggestions, or any input, not personalities. The board shall not hear personal complaints concerning any employee or group of employees of the school district or any person connected with the school district. These concerns should be addressed through administration. Presentations must be in good taste, befitting the occasion and dignity of the board meeting. The open forum allows for the board to hear public comment, but there should be no expectation on the part of the citizen for a response at this time. The board will take your comments under advisement and conduct its business within the confines of board protocol. So with that being said, our first patron tonight is Joplin Imberson.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. My name is Joplin Imberson. I'm the pastor of the Well Worship Center, located at 421 North Westview Drive here in Derby, Kansas. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I am here tonight on behalf of our church to ask for special consideration to accept our offer to purchase the Pleasant View Elementary School. I have 5 quick reasons why we believe that we would be a good option for the Derby School District. And more generally speaking, Derby as a community. Number 1 being that our mission is to serve the community of Derby, Kansas. It is literally why we are here. It's what we do. We serve the people of this community. We've spent the last 14 years here serving this community, and we have no plans of going anywhere. The Well Worship Center is here to stay. Number 2, we actually need the space. We have been out of space for about 3 years. We have no room for growth where we are currently located. And this is true not only for our regular weekly worship services, but a lot of our outreach programs that do make a significant impact in this community, we just need space with. One example would be our Heaven's Hands ministry. This is a ministry that, for example, on any given Christmas season, it's not unlikely for us to help 150 families within the school district with Christmas. And when I say 150 families, I mean families, not gifts, but families. It's not uncommon for us to deliver over 1,000 gifts the week of Christmas, and about 85% of those being to non-attenders of the well. I mean, you don't have to attend our church to be part of the program. We do something very similar for Thanksgiving, and year-round we help with food, rent assistance, and utilities and rent to people in need. And just quite frankly, where we're at now, we simply do not have the space to hold everything we need to run that operation properly. I could go on a handful of other examples, but I will leave it there for tonight. Number 3, we plan on keeping the facility open to the neighborhood. Our goal is to take that outdoor area that is currently used as a playground and keep it that way. We do plan on, if we're able to make this happen, we plan on making a parking lot there and extending what is currently there all the way out to the north side of the property, where we would add a full basketball court. And our goal is to leave those things accessible to the people in the community to be used for many years to come. We plan on keeping it looking great. And number 4, we do believe that our use of the property would have a greater impact on this community than selling it to a company would. We are a true nonprofit organization here to love and serve the people of Derby. And while I do not know what other offers are on the table, I sincerely believe that most of them probably can't say that with the sincerity that we can. We've had a handful of neighbors that have reached out to us telling us they hope that somehow we can end up in that building. And while we recognize we might not be the highest bidder on the table, we do believe that we have the most to offer overall as to what we can do with that historic building and continue to use it to reach the community of Derby. And then finally, number 5 tonight, we're serious enough about the offer that we have reworked our original offer. We have taken all contingencies off the table. It is a done deal, cash deal, no need for guaranteed rezoning. And for what it's worth, I have already spoken with the city, the planner, and we have the go-ahead from them that they will write whatever letters are needed for us to get the zoning that would need to change. Obviously, the process still has to allow for the citizens to speak. But as far as the city of Derby is concerned, they've said there would be no problems with us getting in there and making the zone changes needed. And therefore, we've taken all contingencies off. Thank you for hearing my heart tonight. If you guys have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them. We're going to stick it out for the meeting as well if there's something that comes up later during discussions, but that's all I have for you.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for sharing with us. Okay, so next up we have Devin Packard. I don't see Devin. No, not here. Okay. Oh. Is there a letter? Do we have a letter, Latona? Okay, I don't have it. Okay, all right. We'll look at it for next time. All right, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. First, under consent, we have our building open time changes for Derby High School, our donation to Derby High School from Terry Griebling, Alternative School Committee, Benefit Study Committee, Calendar Committee, Capital Improvements and Facilities Committee, Gating Criteria Committee additions, Handbook Review Committee, Memorandum of Understanding for Athletics Activities, Safety and Security Committee and District Crisis Team, Strategic Plan Steering Committee, Teacher Eval Committee, Zoom licenses, Realtor Contract Extension for Pleasantview Elementary property, Memorandum of Understanding for See Something, Say Something program, Certified and Classified Personnel Reports and Claims.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? 6-0. Okay, next up, we're moving on to our reports. And first up, we have our update on refunding proposal with John Regier.
Good evening, John Regier, Director of Finance. Tonight, I've brought Steve Sjogren here with me from Stiefel to give an update on our bond refunding. As you guys know, we did do some refunding of the 2012 bonds in August, saving the district roughly $748,000. And tonight, I'll turn it over to Steve here in a minute to go over the opportunity to refund the 2018 bonds as what we discussed in the March timeframe prior to the pandemic. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Sjogren.
Thank you, John. Mr. President, members of the board.
Steve Sjogren, Managing Director with Stiefel. As Mr. Vergeer indicated, we came to the board in March of 2020. Interest rates were at all-time lows at that point in time, and we suggested that we thought there was an opportunity to lock in significant interest cost savings for the district on its 2012 and 2018 bonds. Certainly, it's been an interesting year, to say the least. In March, about that same time, we came to the board, the COVID-19 pandemic became very obvious, and our markets went chaotic. Interest rates spiked as much as 200 basis points or 2%, and our concept of advanced refunding those bonds disappeared in about a 1-week period. As Mr. Vergeer said, we came back, I think about 3 months ago, and the 2012 bonds worked. We saved significant monies, met our target at that point in time. Your April meeting, when we talked about refunding and explained the changes in the market, you adopted a new resolution, and we changed our targets, minimum value savings, and that resulted in the opportunity to do the 2012 bonds and save monies. Well, we're back. Interest rates are actually lower than they were in March of this year. You might recall we estimated that total advanced refunding a savings of approximately $6 million in future interest cost savings. We ran the numbers on the 2018 bonds a couple of weeks ago. The savings at that time would result in an estimated just under $6.2 million. I want to indicate the markets are very volatile still, but we think there's an excellent opportunity to lock in and lower the interest cost on those 2018 bonds, the callable portion, at this point in time, if the market holds in for about 30 days. The process, if you elect to go forward by resolution, we prepare a preliminary official statement. In fact, we've got that prepared. We must get a rating. Our time challenge is that we prefer a rating by Moody's, and they are backed up with lots of requests for ratings, but we're hoping we can encourage them to expedite our process. But it may take 2 or 3 weeks to get the rating. In the interim, we'll do a due diligence search with the district to verify that the information is still adequate and accurate. And if the market holds in there, we'd like to offer the bond issue and create an estimated $6 to $6.2 million in savings. We've shared with you that numbers run in a spreadsheet, simplified spreadsheet. We've got kind of a fallout circumstance. The rating is an expense. We're willing to undertake that expense. The rating could cost approximately $75,000. Stiefel will take that expense. There is no exposure to the district to any financial cost. If the markets would, once again, go up significantly in interest rates. We'd like a fallout position, and the second representation is a worst case scenario, and that would be just to refund a portion of the bonds, specifically the 5% coupons maturing out through 2043. That, instead of a $106 million bond issue refunding in scenario 1, it would be about a $49 million transaction. And what we've done is calculate what if interest rates went up 35 to 40 basis points from this position. That's a significant move. If they went up 35 to 40 basis points, that refunding those 5% coupons would still save more than $2 million. And the present value of that savings, which is your target by resolution, would still be more than 4%. of refunded principal. And so we're optimistic that one of those scenarios or something in between would work in this environment if the markets do not react somewhat like they did last March and last April. And so Gilmore and Bell, your bond council's prepared a resolution. It modifies, it keeps the 4% target. What we've done, your resolution in April gave a 6-month limitation to actually sell the bonds and enter into a bond purchase agreement. We're worried about that time factor, and that's mainly why we're here tonight. We'd like to extend that for 60 days, if you would agree, in case the whole deal doesn't fall apart. If we're ready to go, but cannot market the bonds by, I believe the date is October the 10th, we don't want to lose the opportunity and have to come back to the board for a change in that time frame, so to speak. We're optimistic. We want the district to have the opportunity to take advantage of historically low interest rates and reduce the interest cost on your existing general obligation bonds. That's what we'd request by resolution, change primarily the date of a transaction to be not completed by, but the bond purchase agreement signed by going into December rather than October. We're excited about the possibility. The markets are good. We are seeing tax exempt. This is not tax exempt, but the interest rates on tax exempts today, 20-year bonds are under 2%. Taxables require a higher interest rate without that tax advantage. We have to do this taxable since this is an advance refunding. The bonds are not callable immediately, and so that's our only option. But those rates are very low also, and we'd like to lock that in for you. I'd be glad to stand for any questions of the Board of Education.
Well, that's great news. Anytime you want to bring that kind of news, that's pretty exciting stuff. I do have one quick question, and it might be for John, but how would that savings be realized across the district or the city if that does pan out?
So if that plan pans out, and if we're talking the larger of the savings, what that does is it'll be able to lower our bond and interest fund mill rate by about $500,000 a year, if so chose by the Board of Education to continue to do that. But by having less of an interest rate, we have less payments to make, so that can allow us to lower the mill levy by $500,000 in our bond and interest fund.
So that's actually realized savings to all the taxpayers as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right,
Yes.
thanks. Any other questions? Matthew?
So there is an action item tonight for the updated resolution. We went ahead and put that on there for if the board so chose.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, I'm not seeing any, so thank you, and we will be waiting for the action item. Thank you. Okay, next up, under reports, we have item 5B is our gating committee update.
Good evening, Heather Bohati, Superintendent. Tonight, first, I want to just reflect a little bit upon the beginning of the school year. And I think it's important for the Board of Education to know, and then also for our viewers that are watching this evening, that one, I think under the circumstances, we've had a great start. But I also think it's important to say, just as Joel with DNEA said, there has been a lot of extra work. I would agree with him with stress, anxiety. There's a lot to making this year start out. And we're continuing because we continue to get information and new things coming through to work through things as they come out. But I'm super proud of all of our staff, certified, classified, our administrators, and all the extra work, because across the board, and I think when we look at this, we saw this even on Superintendent's Advisory Council, the things, people have put in a tremendous amount of time, and I think everybody needs to have that. And I so appreciate all the efforts and very proud about where we're at. And it's fantastic to see our kids both, whether it's in person or online, to welcome them back. As he made reference, it's interesting because I pulled the same article because I think it really encapsulates, it's from the Morning Sun, actually in Pittsburgh, that they had interviewed the Kansas Commissioner of Education. And as they said in there, some of the quotes was, you know, I had never seen, whether it's school boards, principals, teachers, and administrator under so much stress in their life. Because no matter what they do, it's wrong and doesn't entirely solve the problem because it's viewed different ways from different people. And we keep trying to problem solve and work. And sometimes you just have to take the expertise from those that are in certain positions and again, problem solve together. And I appreciate it. We also echo with what he said, DNEA and working with staff across the board, certified, classified, and our administrators to work things up. The article also went to say that the Kansas State Department of Education focused on two things: opening schools and keeping people safe. And I think that's important to also echo. Those were ours. We had focused on, and it's still stuff that we're working through, all the way from when you look at our high school administration working so hard on trying to, with schedules, to other just cleaning logistics with it. But I think opening schools is one of the things that we focused on, but keeping people safe and how we're cleaning and doing everything day to day is important. I think another piece on here, and again, always like focusing on the positive, but I also want to be realistic, but we want to make sure we're continuing to be supportive and work through things, because as they quoted in here too, that sometimes the feeling has been, whether it's administrators or others, as it talks about telling him that the jobs have become impossible. And I think that's important to say that we're going to keep optimistic. We problem solve together and work through, but there has been a lot of challenges to get to the point where we're at, but we're very proud about where we're at. As I said at the beginning of the year, I said it's a great time to lead, and we have to look at that not only with administrators, but also whether you're in a teaching position or classified. I was so proud today, just even driving by and seeing our meal pickup, and they're taking pride in everything that they're doing, and that's what we have to do. And same way with you guys as Board of Education, because I know you hear from many individuals too, and working on that navigation. It's going to be this year, they say on there, it's a balance between accountability and also flexibility as we navigate, continue to navigate. And when I say that, just as of today, some changes came out, and we had a 12:30 Zoom with Dr. Watson with KSDE. And one of those changes, I know information went out, was even learning logs today. So that's even, as I said, we have a lot of times have to pivot. That was one of the challenges, I think, not only staff, but parents were facing, because that accounts for some of the emails that I have in my inbox right now about learning logs and the concern with maintaining and stuff there. So we do need to hear from people. We'll sure try to work through the things that we can. And that with that recommendation, KSDE had that. That was not a Derby piece of it. It was statewide on learning logs to have accountability. And they have lifted that piece. So parents district-wide will be getting one sheet. So that doesn't mean just remote kids. It's all students will get one sheet to fill out, saying that if we ever were to move to remote, of assurances of knowing what that is. So those sheets will be coming out. The other one is that is a change as of recent, and I appreciate Nikki Seeley is in constant communication, we'll just say, with Sedgwick County Health Department. And one of the items that came out is notification. So we have updated our sheet that I think you guys have seen before. What we there's a sheet that says when there is a COVID-19 case in Derby Public Schools, what we will and will not do. So that was changed as of today. So before, we just notified those individuals that were deemed close contacts. The change is, from this point forward, we will notify, of course, those people that were close contact and let them know they were close contact. But also is if they were in a class, Sedgwick County has directed us that we will notify the entire class. So there are other things that we have. There's a form letter that's provided from Sedgwick County Health Department, but that information will go out to classes if that's the case. So again, with that, and I'll get into the gating criteria, just very, very proud of our staff, our administrators. When you think about it, and it's hard sometimes to wrap your head, but even the tables that you're sitting, those are the lunch tables right now that we're using, and this whole room would be full of lunch tables. But lunches have had to look differently when we look at different various procedures and trying to work on that. When you think of cleaning all the tables and cleaning things in between class, and there's only a few minutes, and then of course, I mean, that's the time too, if a teacher needs to use a restroom, okay? I mean, you got the whole thing going on here that people have had to balance and have those logistics. It's the reality. So proud of the work that they're doing and trying to work all of that out. So with that being said, I want to go into the gating criteria. We had a good, I would say definitely representation on our last gating committee meeting that was held. That meeting was held on August 26th of 2020 this year, and it did start at 1 o'clock. And it was, I will just say, it was a lengthy meeting, but very well in good discussions. With that piece, I'm going to walk through in the board packet, or people at home that are following along. We're looking at the gating criteria consideration sheet. We have criteria that the Board of Education, you guys set out. And it talked about the gating criteria considerations, community trend, community criteria, building absenteeism in hospitals. So we spent time. We are fortunate that we had the head with the Sedgwick County Health Department, Adrian, was able to join us on the call and stayed with us the duration of the call, in addition to our 3 physicians and then the rest of the committee members, which was very helpful. So we got familiar at that meeting with the data, where to find the data and different trends. I will also say we do find different changes and we keep updated. And I'll say Nikki again, giving her and her department credit for keeping up on what those trends are. And we'll do the same with this upcoming committee meeting and looking at what information we have. So when we looked at the first one, the first criteria, gating considerations, the previous 14 days shows 10% less positive tests and steady or decreasing new cases. It was important, the data that we looked at actually pulled out some different clusters. It was kind of more of a new line item that we had on there. So looking at the nursing homes and jails were pulled out of that, and taking a look at that piece of it. But it was deemed that we were in yellow in that point at this time. And some of that data piece has been updated since then. The next one then was looking at community trends. And when we look at that on community trends, that was another one that we said was at this time stable. So that also fell in the yellow. The community criteria, when we looked at the cases, the number of cases, that one actually was in red because it had over 151 new cases. Building absenteeism, when we looked at that one at the time, we didn't have any data since we had not been in school. Now, the next time that we're going to be looking, Dr. Putnam Jackson will have that information. It will be just a few days, and we'll need to keep that in mind when we're looking at it. It's a very short snippet of what we have for absenteeism. And then the last one is our hospital rate at the time was deemed in green. So when that was all discussed, there was many different pieces that were discussed on there. I know we have some board members that served on that, but bottom line, we came up with that we would operate in yellow going forward. So that was that piece. The second piece of it was the safety logistics piece. We did spend time going through everything from masks, temperature checks, and the other items that are listed on there. And those were deemed at the time to start off in the high level, making sure we're taking definite precautions as we move forward. Each time I think is important, and this is another piece that I think will help reduce someone as we're working through with staff anxiety or stress, but it's trying to get some more routines, because right now there's so many different changes and updates and things that are happening. But the cycle, if we're looking at any changes, what we're looking at is that, again, we would talk at the committee meeting. That is this Wednesday. We announce whatever it is on Wednesday. So we would let them know how we're operating with school. So whether that's in person, hybrid, or remote. And then in addition to where we are logistic wise. I do understand there's some new updates that have come specifically on temperature checks. And that is one that will be discussed on Wednesday at that meeting and then communicated out to make sure our families and our staff are well aware before we implement. So with that, I think those are the updates from the gating criteria and back to school, which again, we're glad to be back, and I will stand for any questions that you may have.
All right, any comments, questions from the board? Okay, I don't see any from anyone. Oh, Andy, go ahead.
In regard to the change on the notification letter, did the health department say why they changed that from 4 to 3? Is there do we have any reason behind why?
Do we have?
That would be helpful. I mean, was there an instance where, you know, there was a spread by somebody who's being around or in the same room and they wanted those concrete? That would be helpful for us, you know, to make decisions. Again, if pass that along. That's a shift.
It is as of today.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, to start, yeah, I want to agree and thank everyone for all the hard work they put in for the last couple of weeks, especially even leading up to this for last month or so, getting ready for school. I know it's been a lot of stress for staff and families as well. But I know it's nice to have. I mean, I'm hearing people. It's nice to have kids back, you know, and seeing them, and it's good to hear them and all that kind of. And so it's exciting that we're there, and just want to thanks for all that hard work to get us there. Oh, okay. Sorry, you're good. So with that being said, I also want to move on to the committee. The committee spent a couple hours, I think you said, you know, going through that, and that is definitely appreciated. A lot of expertise on there, from doctors to, I think we had some psychologists or counselors on there, to staff, everybody involved, and so I think that's very helpful, very needed. I'm going to touch also on a little bit from kind of what I talked about a couple weeks ago, and that is, I still, my personal feeling behind this is that I still do believe that this is probably one of the most important, if not the most important, decisions that will be made. Well, would have been by a school board or whatever as we move forward. I mean, we're talking about, you know, keeping kids in the classroom or sending them home. And so I think that kind of decision is, like I said before, is a decision that I feel is what we were elected to do, to make those decisions as a board. And I understand it's been delegated at this point, but I know we've also been in for a couple of weeks now. So I don't necessarily, I worry about maybe the precedent that we set as we delegate approvals out of the board for committee decisions as we move forward. So I don't know, kind of, when do we decide what in the future will have us, will we determine if we keep the decision at our level or if we pass it on. And I understand some things maybe we could pass on, you know, things that maybe don't need to be at that elevated level. But this, in my opinion, still is at such a high level that we should be involved in the approval process as a whole board, not just 3 members on a committee. And as we all saw last meeting, all 7 members wanted to be on the committee. So there is definitely interest by the board to be involved and make to hopefully make this decision as a unified board as we move forward in each bi-weekly call. No matter how it goes forward, we are the ones, or maybe not the only ones, we will also receive, which I'm sure everybody has, emails. But I'm getting phone calls. I don't know if people can get my phone number, but I'm getting phone calls and texts with asking, like, how was this decided? What happened during the committee meeting? You know, and I don't even know because I'm not on it. And so that's a bit frustrating. But I do think this is a decision that the board needs to bring back and be involved. I think the committee is vitally needed. Like every other committee we have, this one has the expertise that we need to make those decisions. But there should be a recommendation, and then we publicly would make this decision in a very transparent setting. So I just, with this being under report, I understand we can take actions. So with all that being said, I'm going to, again, attempt to make a motion that we as a board will be the final decision makers on how we proceed each time the gating committee meets with our school curriculum delivery plan. So that's my motion, and we'll see if anybody has any comments on that. Yes, Pam, look. With what I said?
What was the question?
Oh, his question, what did you talk
In
about?
regard to the change from the county on the letter that was just sent out, if there's a case, everybody has to be notified. I think if they're in the same class, is that right? Yeah, which is a change just today. So there's constant changes, and I was just curious to know why. Did something happen? Was there a situation in a school where this happened, or is this just something that we're just kind of shifting gears on? So it's just a challenge as administrators are trying to navigate this. We're trying to understand how to navigate it as well, that it just changes that quick. So that was my question.
Okay.
So I was on the committee, and I appreciate everybody that was on it. I do think we had a good representation of teachers, administrators, a lot of people involved with the process, board members. But I don't think we have to just limit it to having 3 board members on that committee. I think we can have potentially all the board members sit during the meeting and make a decision at the end of that, perhaps. So I would second Justin's motion with us trying to figure out how this would look. But I think it makes sense. There is a lot of responsibility that I think we're somewhat putting on to the committee. While I appreciate being on the committee, and I think we had a great process, and I think we continue to have a great process with those people still on the committee and get their feedback. I do think it makes sense to have the board approve it. So I would second this motion.
Okay, and Matthew, go ahead. You want
Just a quick comment.
Matthew?
So
So I can get you on here.
the only concern I have with this motion is the fact that if we put the whole board on there again, there's certain reporting criteria that have to be published and everything else. And if it's sitting at a regular deal, that's but my friend, if it's the fan, and they have to call a special meeting right away because something's happened, we can't all be there because the reporting doesn't happen quick enough. Right now, the gating community is taking their guidance from the Sedgwick County Department of Health. And I think as long as we continue to follow that process, I think we're fine. I understand your position that all the board members want to be on it. Well, there's a lot of things all the board members want to be on, but it doesn't always work out that way. As long as we're getting a report out regularly, I guess I don't see a problem with it right now. As long as we're following the process, things should be fine.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, any other, you want it back? Okay, hold on.
And I get that. So a couple of things.
trying to
I
move
would
this.
say that as serving on that committee, there's still decisions that we make as a committee that would be made as a board. It's not, there's still interpretation that we take the health department's information, and there's still some interpretation as to how we look at some of the percentages, those types of things that are made by that committee. So while there is direction from the health department, there are things that we're able to navigate in that committee that would be navigated as a board. So there are decisions that we would make.
Right, they could be brought to us in the next board meeting. I'm talking about when you're meeting regularly, every 2 weeks like it is right now, that's fine and dandy to have the whole board there because staff go ahead and advertise that we're meeting at the board at those meetings every 2 weeks. I'm talking about a scenario where something really went wrong somewhere. And all of a sudden they had to call a snap meeting of that committee because whatever it could be. we couldn't all meet as a board.
Sure.
Because you couldn't meet your, what's the word on that? Is there a reason, you have to get 4 days of notice between the board.
You can,
Just can't
there's,
get around
I
that.
think there's waivers for that, actually.
There is.
Yeah.
I-
For notice.
I've been on this board 10 years, I've never heard of.
We were gonna do, yeah, there's waivers for notice, correct?
You have to notify all the recipients of the board packet,
Yeah.
they all have to agree to it.
Okay.
Everyone, including district staff, all the teachers that we subscribe to.
Okay, well,
Just to respond to, I mean, if there was something that happened, as we talked about before, the health department would get involved. And I mean, if we had,
right.
you know, multiple kids that had it, it would be outside of that committee to take care of that. This is more oversight as to the direction of the in-person, hybrid, remote, whatever we decide, and taking it gradually. But if something big happens,
So I guess the only other concern I would have is, if we're sitting in there, nobody else is gonna speak up, because they're always gonna defer to us for the spot, for a decision. You're not gonna get that honest feedback you need from the community to make good decisions. It's just the way I feel. I mean, I know the way you guys feel, I'm just telling you the way I feel about it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea to have the whole board sitting in on this, at this point. Plain and simple.
Okay. Yep, Robin?
I was just gonna say that as part of that committee, I do feel like everybody had a lot of input, and I was part of that committee 2 weeks ago. And we did hear from the doctors, we heard from administrators, and I felt like we had some really good dialogue. And I agree, I think that people would be much more reserved to speak up if we were all on there. But the other thing that I want to reiterate is that this recommendation came from the KSDE that we follow this process, you know, with a committee of members of the community that help decide that. And I think that, you know, we can honor that too. You know, I feel like that committee is a really good way of getting that input. I do hear what you're saying, that, you know, if there was something that we felt like, you know, absolutely, you know, something's gone awry, but as being part of that committee, I feel like that there was really some good input from everyone.
Okay.
I just want to honor that. You know, they've done a nice job of running it.
Sure, and I'll agree, and I'll respond to that. The committee, KSD put together, recommended a committee. I listened to the call as well, but it doesn't take away the committee still needed. I'm not downplaying. I think the committee has to be there. I'm just saying it should be like most other committees we have, where they can, and maybe we're not on the call, but they get together, they make their decision, they make the recommendations, and they present to the board to make the final decision. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm saying the level of this decision should be at a board level. There's not many other decisions that we'll make as a board that'll be of higher level or importance than this decision, from the way I see it, I guess. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think having committee is fulfilling what KSD is recommending. We're not saying let's not use the committee. I mean, we have to use them. I'm just saying the final approval should be done at the board level, since we're literally talking about the way we're going to deliver curriculum. That I feel like should be the people who are elected to make that kind of policy by the citizens should be making that decision. That's kind of what's been my hesitation since we last talked about the committees. So, okay. Well, with that being said, any other what? Okay, sorry, I just got out of here. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Pamela, did you have any? Okay. All right. So I know I should have looked straight ahead. Okay. All right, that being said, we do have a motion in a second, so we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of moving, Annie, go ahead.
So again, I guess the way I would see it is, I don't think a lot of what we have right now. Currently, we've got 20-some people, community, doctors across the board. It would simply be adding 4 more people to the committee. We could still have at the same time, I would say, a Zoom call, same setup. I mean, the plan is to have a link available for people if they want to watch it anyway. So what's said can be public anyway. So whether or not 4 more board members are there, I don't think that makes a significant difference. As a board member on the committee, I think for the most part, we were pretty quiet and let people talk, you know, that provided feedback. So I don't see it being that much different. So just before we vote, one question I would have is, if we decided to do that, could we put out notice and have it as a board meeting starting Wednesday and then just follow that? So we have a board meeting and then regular board meetings. As scheduled. Basically, adding
Recurring notice. Yeah.
4 more board members to the committee. And
So
we
she'd
follow
have to
the
pick
board
tonight.
meeting one.
The notice would need to go tonight
Right.
regarding it or adding another board meeting on a Wednesday.
Okay.
Same time, same place, 1 o'clock.
We have a board policy on Wednesday then.
Right, normally we don't hold, but you'd have to waive. I mean, normally we try not to do activities on Wednesdays, but that, if you guys decide that, then that
It's
would,
1, right? 1.
right.
So that's just before we vote to know there's an option. I mean, it's really kind of a decision to me of whether or not everybody wants to be a part of it or just for that is helpful.
It turned up. There you go. Start over.
So, but I do really think, I agree with Justin in this, that I think it's important that it should be a board decision.
Okay. Oh, Tina, I'm gonna get you, but you're gonna be real small here, I think. Okay.
So I was on the committee, I'm on the committee as well, and I guess my concern, and it's not necessarily a concern with testing, every year, I would say exactly what I would say to each of their face, but I would say to me, the fact that they did a couple of things during the meeting, so, I don't have a problem with it being like our committees. I mean, I guess my concern would be, when you say, and I do understand it's a very important decision, but when you say you're going to have a committee, and then all of a sudden now you have the entire board on the committee, I think it kind of undermines some of the people on the committee. It may not be intentional, but I think they probably feel that way. And I do agree, I don't think you would have open and honest dialogue if you had every single board member sitting there staring at them, whether we're in person or on Zoom. So I guess I don't have a concern with it staying as a committee.
Okay. Okay, I think we're back on here. All right. Were there any other family? No, sorry, I saw you. No, okay. All right. With that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and take a vote on this one.
I think Ms. Doyle may have.
Oh, never mind. Real quick, we got one more.
Did something happen within the context of that process that changed what we discussed last time?
Hold on, I guess that's done.
I mean, I guess I just said what prompted your reading.
Me? Yeah, so, and I'll respond. So, basically, it's the same concern I had when we voted on this last time. And I'm sure, I mean, people can look it up. It wasn't a full 7-0 vote, it was 5. So I had the same concerns on why I didn't support it the first time. It's kind of why I'm talking about it again. I just feel like this is a board, this should be a board decision. The committee we have to have, and I can go the way that Andy talked about, where we all call into the committee, or I could go the other way where the committee meets like a normal committee meets, and they come to the board meeting and they present to us their recommendations, and we vote on it then, and we can move our meetings to Thursday morning or Thursdays or whatever, like I think Mark had talked about last week. There's ways to work around the constraint of scheduling. I think that shouldn't hold us back. What we need to decide on is what is the right thing to do for this decision. If it's just scheduling, we can work that out, right? If that's the problem with scheduling, then we can figure that out. So I am more focused right now on, I think this is a decision that the board needs to make, just because of the level of decision that it is. And we can always figure out scheduling later, but that's why. I mean, nothing changed from last time. That's why I didn't really support last time. Same thing.
So how does that work if we have a board on here? Is it yes and no count? Or is it just the board members who vote on it?
It would be the board members voting on it. They would recommend to us their findings, then we would vote on it as a board, basically. Just like we would any other committee that presents to us throughout the normal year. Okay, sorry, I thought you had some.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, Andy.
And to also answer your question, Pamela, I think the difference too, at the meeting, when we talked about it, there did seem to be, like Justin pointed out, a issue with timing and how that would work. And to me, if we just added the board members, even if we just add them to the Zoom call, then we would solve that. So that was a big issue when we talked about it before, I thought, and it was kind of one of the major issues. That was the thing kind of holding us back from it being a board decision. And I think if something came up big, that the administrators would have the ability to, step in, the health department would get involved at that point if we had some big outbreak or something like that. This is more of guidance as we're going along, kind of normal business. So hopefully that gives you some perspective on my second.
Okay. I think we've all made all of our comments. So let's go ahead and vote on this one. So motion was to move the final decision making back to the board. Scheduling can be figured out at another time, but we do have a motion in a second. All those in favor of that decision or that motion? Okay, we have a 2-4. This down real quick. Okay, so we are going to, so that motion fails. Were there any other comments anyone wanted to make on gating before we move on to the next report? No? Okay. We will move on to report 5C, the alternative learning with Luann Sparks.
Good evening, Luann Sparks, Director of Alternative Learning. Tonight, I'm here to provide you with the first of 4 reports for the 2021 school year. This report will provide you an update with regard to alternative learning from July 1st to the present. And this is also the very first report for the Department of Alternative Learning. The Department of Alternative Learning focuses on the provision of student support through education, resources, and programs to meet the diverse needs of all students. Scoot over. Some of our students require additional supports or resources or just a different approach to meet their needs. This department will support and supervise academic programs offered through the Alternative High School program that will be located in Derby High School through the development of programs and coordinating resources to best address credit recovery, acceleration of coursework, modified programming, and CTE courses. This is not replacing any of the current services, supports, and resources at Derby High School. Our intention is just to add additional layers of alternative programming to help all of our students ring that bell. And so that is it in a nutshell. Other supports and services include building out our social emotional learning education, K-12, which also includes collaborating with the Mental Health Association to provide school-based services on site and related program coordination of foster care students, and our McKinney-Vento services for our students that are impacted by homelessness. This year has been an interesting year, and I think if there's a silver lining coming out of COVID, we have certainly entertained the notion that we can educate through a lot of different formats. And that's a very exciting place to be as the Director of Alternative Learning. We've had those hard pivots and shifts, and we're realizing that we can certainly do a lot of things to improve and just continue to build out supports and resources for our students. This past getting ready for school, I've worked with our curriculum and instruction. We provided a heavy dose of professional learning opportunities for our staff, new administrators, classified staff. A lot of sessions were also offered that our staff eagerly attended, and just, I was overwhelmed, really. It was very touching to see our staff that engaged with social emotional learning. We covered things with the learning aspects, not things from a social worker perspective, but how do we help our students just engage, and how do we support them in learning those skill sets. Those are competencies that all of our students will graduate with. Other areas that we've been working on is working with managing aggressive behaviors. We've restructured our MAB training. This training is offered by our district staff, and they are trainers. And this year we've restructured that, and we've offered training for administrators only at their request. We've also offering refresher courses for our staff. So we've made quite a bit of progress in a short 11 weeks in this area. We have also been working and looking at our MOU with the Mental Health Association. This past year, we had 40 students receive support through school-based mental health. And even while school was not in session, MHA was continuing to work with our students and our families. So that was a very positive thing. We're looking forward to continuing that and working this year. We are continuing to see high numbers of children in foster care. In 2018, 2019, we had 50 students that were designated under that category. Last year, we recorded 92 students. It is important to be aware that this really replicates the growth that we're seeing across the state of Kansas. It's not a Derby thing or a Sedgwick County thing. It truly is across the entire state. They're seeing a significant increase of children being impacted. This year, we have enrolled and accounted for 88 students. And believe it or not, most of our students are secondary students that are being impacted. So we anticipate those numbers to continue to grow, but we're equipped and we're ready to keep moving forward to best serve our students. But last but not least, progress on the alternative high school. We are on target for the building to be complete by October. And we have come together and we are recommending that the new alternative learning program be called the Panther Learning Center. We are very proud of that name. It has a positive feel to it and it represents our spirit. This name represents the diverse educational experiences that we hope to reflect in this program as we continue to build out the programming and supports for all of our students, not just at the high school, but hopefully as we grow, we can look at middle school and other programs to best meet those needs. The alternative program application that is to be submitted through KSDE is expected to go in the mail this week and be scanned to them. Our related documents have been drafted and are under review. The student process, enrollment process has been drafted and under review. That means I vetted it through Mr. Hamlin and several folks with the high school, making sure that we are providing the avenues of student entry with the vision. And we've created the job description for the secretarial position. Needless to say, the past 11 weeks have been a whirlwind, but we're making exciting progress and we're growing this vision into a reality. And with that, I stand for your questions.
Okay, any questions, comments? Tina?
Thank you for being here. So it makes me pretty excited to see everything that you have done and going through this year, it's going to be very important that we really focus on social, emotional, and focus on our kids because things are shifting rapidly. And not just for our staff, I know you're not here for this, but could you tell me on the Panther Learning Center, what is the application process? Are they first? How are we going to go about that?
All right. The only students that could be referred to the Panther Learning Center are going to be currently our students from Derby High School. So we are not, at this time, this is not a program that's opened up for the county or for the community. Our goal is to maintain a limited enrollment to best support our students in that program. The entry will come through the point of a referral can be made by a parent, a staff member, a student, an administrator, and it will be shared with me. And we have an application for students as well as parents or guardians. And the application process is rather pivotal because there are pieces from that application that will help us mitigate and plan for that student's success in that program. We will have a meeting that vets and is a comprehensive record review, looking at discipline, attendance, why has the student been successful? And then a committee of the student, myself, and as we build out, we will have our social worker, members from the counseling support team, a DHS administrator, and if there are other, perhaps they may have a counselor or an MHA or other support personnel, we will come together and create an individualized plan for that student, an IPP, basically. It's not an IEP, it's just an individual plan so that we're addressing proactively those things that may have either been a barrier or they have a desire to finish because they're ready to go to college. We need to know what those things are so we can address them. You're
Okay.
welcome.
Any other, Robin?
Thank you for sharing all this information with us tonight. I think that you're definitely on a good process and getting started. So I was wondering, and I've been over to Maine and toured their facility over there too, and a couple of other alternative environments. But I was wondering if you're going to plan to have like contracts with the students, and then also I've seen students really take pride in their setting, in their learning setting, and so I really hope that that's the kind of environment that you have here too. So just wondering about contracts and everything.
Very much so. The IPP will be a part where the parent and the school staff and the student sign. So that's creating that contract of agreement and expectation. The pivotal piece of this program will be they will have biweekly student advisement. Every other week, they're meeting with their student advisor. They will be looking at what they've completed, what their grades are, how are they doing with attendance, were there any discipline or behavioral concerns, or any other issues that could be impacting that student's ability to be a successful high school student. So we kind of entered a lot of those, and our applications, I did review several different alternative high school different applications. So we really have, I think, the best of all of them in our application format. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No? Okay, I'm just gonna echo them. Definitely gonna be a new year full of probably some challenges that we weren't expecting. But I just want to thank you for what you're doing to get everything ready and set up, and just that we keep, like Tina had said, just the social emotional at the forefront for, I assume we'll have kids probably remote and in person. So we need to, make sure that we're keeping track of all of that. So, but thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to report 5D. It's KISA outside visitation team report with Dr. Holly Putnam Jackson. Hope I said that right.
You did say that right.
Okay, good.
Dr. Putnam Jackson, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, just sharing with you some information from our Kansas Educational System Accreditation Outside Visitation Team report. It's a mouthful. What the outside visitation team consists of is a couple of university representatives as well as representatives from other school districts that come annually and give us feedback on advice on how we're progressing towards our accreditation goals. This year we are entering year 4. The report that you're looking at is a summary of year 3, which was our first year of implementation. And so the report, I won't read it to you because it was included in your packet, but I will just highlight a few pieces for you. They start off by looking at general compliance factors for our school district. This includes our social emotional, our tiered interventions, as well as arts, stakeholder engagement, diversity, and equity. Physical and mental health. So some of those are social emotional pieces that Luann was speaking of that we intentionally front loaded this year, as well as arts and culture appreciation and post-secondary career success. They go through each one of those areas and look specifically at compliance factors that our district is required to report on to KSCE, as well as general implementation milestones, and ensure that our district is in compliance. And so you'll see there in the first couple of lines that the outside visitation team has noted that our district is in compliance for each one of those areas. They then go on and talk about our two key goal areas, which are rigor and relevance. And so they went through and just kind of summarized again the highlights of each one of our goals. So for rigor, they talk about the district professional development philosophy statement that our district PDC, as well as our strategy committee that was led by Dr. Koenigs, took a look at and recommended, and that's been added to our curriculum website. And then they also talk about common assessments and how we use facilitating teacher teams and brought in a presenter to train our educators and administrators on best practices for collaboration, and commended our school district for our work in that area. And then for our second goal, relevance, they actually reviewed our vertical and horizontal articulation documents at each level and provided us with some feedback, and then looked at artifacts from our district professional development days from last year, and even kind of dug into each school's individual evidence file and looked for examples of how teachers were applying and using both the assessment data that they've learned from students through Mastery Connect, DIBEL, CBM, our other common assessments that we use, as well as vertical maps themselves to see, how they were altering their plan based upon what they saw in student data, and provided us with some feedback for that. And so as they looked at each area, they said, we've done quite a bit of work. They asked a lot of questions about our new elementary math curriculum series, and then kind of looked at our data and said, it looks like you are making really good progress, especially for year 3, where you're beginning to implement all of these things. And then they said, as we are in a pandemic, we suggest that you, take a bit of a breather, if you will, and really make sure that each one of those things continues, but that you've adapted it to meet the needs of things that are going on in your district, so that you're supporting your staff and your students as we move forward through this next school year. So they reflected some of those things in that report, but overall, the report seemed to give us some very positive feedback, as well as our educators and administrators that work on each one of those committees. And so as we looked at this report this year, the State Department of Education came out with some additional guidance that gave school districts options for what we would do with our KISA process this year. And it kind of aligned with our outside visitation team's feedback for last spring for this review that they conducted virtually, which really gave them a nice opportunity to dig in to the evidence that each school submitted. And the State Department of Education has given school districts the option of either pausing through December, and I know the state board is having some additional conversation if that needs to be the whole school year, and some notes that they sent out, or continuing with the process. And so we've had some conversation with administrators, and some of the feedback that we've gotten is that, the curriculum piece of it, the assessments, the collaboration, which is extremely important when you have some teachers who are teaching remotely and others that are teaching in person. All of those things are still important to continue with, but what we do plan to do is to take some of their guidance or advice on maybe slowing down and doing some of those things more intently than others to support our staff as we move forward with this process this year. So with that, I will stand for any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, Robin?
I have a comment. Having been a part of that for the last 2 years, I just know how much work has gone into it, and that it has been just go, 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 and you guys have done so much. And I really love the idea of taking a little bit of a pause just to be able to support the staff, especially in light of what Joel shared, what Heather shared earlier about, the commissioner and the stress level of our teachers and everything. So I just think applaud you for all the things that you've done in the last 3 years, but also applaud you for taking a little pause just to give that support.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I did see in here, we talked a little bit about the one caution they had on the math curriculum. Was that to do because of the year that we're in? Just a lot going on top of a new math. So, okay, yeah. So I would agree that maybe that's probably the best route to go. But yeah, thanks for all you guys are doing, all the hard work you guys put into this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to our discussion items. First up, item 6A is our superintendent's evaluation process and timeline with Heather Bahati.
Good evening again, Heather Bahati, Superintendent. Tonight, bring before you the proposed superintendent evaluation process and timeline this year. Just giving you some brief highlights. Really, the process involves 2 formal filling out the document. Technically, we'd only need to do 1, but having some feedback each semester, especially with everything going on, that would be much appreciated as we move through. You can see different documentation provided. So the evaluation instrument really focuses around working on the board goals that you adopted. So with that directly from the strategic plan. So you can see those outlined in your packet, the 5 different strategy areas. And you would receive, prior to us visiting, a compiled document from each of the strategies for your review in advance, and then can obviously follow up with any questions. At the board meeting, we would have each director that is responsible or staff member responsible for that area to present to so you can hear in person and ask questions. So I'll stand for any questions that you may have on the timeline and process proposed for this year.
Okay, any comments or questions on this one? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the board workshop options with Heather Bahati.
At the recent board retreat, one of the topics that we visited about was looking at our upcoming board workshops that we have planned. There's 2 of them this year. One is in November 30th, and the other one is March 29th. And coming up with some topics and make sure we have emphasis of what you as a board would like to see. So a couple of those items that came up was more diving into with strategic planning and really also looking at operational goals and how things are developed and bringing some of those systems forward for discussion. And that would be proposed for November 30th. And the other one is focusing around safety, security in the spring. So unless you would like to propose anything else, these are the 2 that we would plan to present.
Okay. Oh, I think Tina has a few more she wants to add. So no, kidding. Go ahead, Tina.
No answer for on that March 9th meeting, would it be possible that maybe we could do like because by then the family learning center will have had some solutions and maybe
Combine them.
have a little bit of that day, maybe have a little bit of a tour, you know, get it before.
Happy to do so. Okay, we can add that. So Panther Learning Center.
We just combine them, the 2. Is that what you're? Yeah.
Just like we did on the other, have operational and strategic.
Okay.
Just do safety, security, and then dedicate some time to that.
Any other questions, comments? Nope.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you. We're going to move on to our action items for tonight. First up, item 7A is the revised bond sale resolution number 2020-0413 with John Regier.
Good evening again, John Regier, Director of Finance. Earlier we heard from Steve Sjogren and Stifel in regards to an update to our refunding of our 2012 and our 2018 bonds. In your packet is a revised resolution that notes the extension of 60 days, but then also revises it to not include the 2012 bonds, which were previously refunded back in August. With the adoption of the resolution, they will be able to continue forward with the rating process, as well as continue to watch the market as it is still fairly volatile with the current pandemic that we're in. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor? 6-0. Thanks, John. Okay, next up, item 7B is the sale of Pleasant View property with Heather Bahati.
Very good. Heather Bohati, Superintendent. Tonight, we bring before you the current offers that we did receive at the last Board of Education meeting. You had asked for offers to be submitted by a particular date and time. And then also wanted to know what the uses for the facilities would be. And so we've provided that information in your packet, both the amounts and what those would be used for. The other piece is, as you can see from your packet, there are certain offers that are no contingency in cash offers versus other offers. So I think that's important to outline. But before we get too far into that, I would like to, Burke Jones, our Director of Operations, had taken time and worked and had a conversation with the city too regarding zoning. So just to provide you a little information of what he found out from his conversations.
Burke Jones, Director of Operations. So I did have a conversation with the city about zoning and what can and cannot be there. It's really their purview, but in a nutshell, if it's anything other than a church, it would need to, whoever purchased the property would need to go through a rezoning process. And that's where you begin to look at contingencies of the offers and who stated that as a contingency or not. But that's, from my understanding, talking to the city, that's kind of where they're at with the zoning side of it.
You said the church is the only thing that doesn't make.
Right. And there's even some nuances with that, which I don't think we necessarily need to get into tonight, but kind of depends on the programs the church has for the public and that kind of thing. But churches would fit within this zoning, even if they required kind of an exception, right?
I'm gonna, so just to be clear, 3 of our offers on here don't have any contingency, 0, no zoning, no nothing. They're just straight. They'll figure it all out after they buy it. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. If
Okay.
there's no contingencies, then it's up to them to figure it out.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, next with the offers, and again, we appreciate, we know several of you guys are, ladies are here in the crowd this evening, so appreciate you guys being here and your patience, because I know we've had some lengthy meetings and having discussions to get to this, this point. We'll stand, I know we have Mr. Schroeder here too, but we would stand for any questions with the offers that we've received in the packet that you guys may have.
Okay. Go ahead, Pamela.
I will have Mr. Schroeder talk about, I know he's been closely working with him.
Yes, Mr. Khan and I and his banker had a conversation, I believe Friday. And there was a misunderstanding between the banker and Mr. Khan about what is considered a cash deal. And so after that conversation, it was made clear that the financing was required in order to consummate any deal with Mr. Khan.
So I'll go ahead and ask the question. Probably most people are wondering right now. It looks like almost all of our offers dropped. Did we get any feedback why the offers all went down?
No real feedback other than I think it was an opportunity for all the participants to see what each other was offering. And then after thinking it through, they made the adjustments as they saw necessary.
Okay, any other comments, questions before Matthew?
So, just personal, just bond offer, again, I got an issue with this, trying to do finance, that's a problem. With what Bert said tonight about the church, that seems like our safest offer right now. And, I know there's one that's a little higher there, but, again, I'm concerned of what the city would do. And of course, when they said they'd be opening it up to the general public, the church itself, that has a certain appeal, kind of goes back to the heart of what we're doing with the school district. And, I'm not making a motion yet, but
Okay.
kind of crap.
No, you're good.
I think what we need to do is, we gotta have to realize that we are having to demolish this building, so that right away is saving us $250,000, approximately. Yeah, approximately, that's saving us $250,000, so let's say we're $250,000 positive right now, even without not having to demolish it.
Mhm.
And then any money on top of that is gonna be just money coming the opposite way, balance the books. So, yes, I'd like to see, I would like to give Bert and John some room to negotiate with the church if I were to make a motion. I guess I kind of want to see how the board feels before I go that route.
So,
Just to get people's opinions, you know, where we put a bottom dollar is 159, but if they can negotiate a better deal for us, let them go ahead and do that, so we don't have to bring it back to the board. Is that something that you guys feel comfortable with? Or would you rather go down or go to a different route, or?
Okay.
I'm just throwing it out there for conversation right now. The one thing I am concerned about is dragging this out another meeting.
mhm.
I think we need to make the sale. We don't want to have to keep this thing in the winter.
Right.
Because that's all of a sudden occurring at cost again, and the whole point is to make sure that we get the best deal, but we aren't also shelling out money to things either wall or to drag out.
Okay.
I will mention in the discussion, and if Mr. Jones wants to clarify, because I think it's important when we're looking at all offers and people have taken a lot of time, you know, with this, but when you look at the 2 highest or even 3 highest, you know, offers that are there. But right now, if you look at the highest offer at 189 that we have, my understanding is they also have been in conversation with the city of Derby. I don't want to speak to what they will or will not do, but I do know that they've been in conversation. Do you have anything else?
I guess, I just wanted to clarify that I'm not, you know, the city can change their mind on a dime, but from talking to the city, even though there are nuances with a church using that existing zoning, that would still be up to, you know, the church to work through with the city. And, you know, that's, I think, why they also included no contingencies in their offer, because we can't say for sure what the city's going to do or not do. So I don't want to give an impression to the board that the city's necessarily 100% for that use under that zone.
And I understood that.
Okay.
It sounded like the least complicated solution.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, this without full information.
Can
I work for PA Construction. Can you all hear me?
Can you walk over?
Hi, my name is Rachel Barris and I work for SBA Construction, and the owner of SBA Construction put in the Herr Schmader bid, which is the bid for 189. I can't speak for Gilbert and Hazen because I don't know for sure what theirs is, but where it says no contingencies on there, that means no contingencies. You do not need to factor in the zoning because these are people that are offering to buy this regardless of the zoning. So when you're saying that the church is a better offer because they have no contingencies, no offense to the church at all, But the church actually has a contingency because they have to get, well, it's not a contingency, an exception. They have to get the exception approved, which is fine. Schmader has no contingencies. It is not reliant upon financial, it's not reliant upon zoning, nothing. He just wants to buy the property, that's it.
Okay.
And he has a plan, if it doesn't get rezoned, he has another plan of what he wants to do. So he wants the property regardless if the city will rezone it.
Okay. I got a couple questions. I think Tina does as well. I'd like to ask, so she's here with Schmader and the well as well. I kind of asked them the same question, and it kind of goes along the same lines, and I would be happy if you could both answer. If your zoning request doesn't go through, what are you going to do with the building? And same for you. If you can't get that thing, what is your plan for the building as well? Because you have bought it, and so that's kind of where I would like to know, both of you guys, what will you do if it doesn't work?
So SBA construction, we have built a lot of housing, and like in your guys' last meeting, somebody had asked whether or not this particular building was going to be demolished and then it was going to be something else, or if we keep the existing building. The hope is that the rezoning gets approved and then we can turn this building all into one big senior housing community. It would have exterior entrances to each of the senior units. If that does not go through, this is already zoned as R1, which is residential. So the school is kind of like a unique thing on top of the zoning, but the zoning on this through the city is R1, which is single family residential. So we could bulldoze this building and build single family homes in here, which we also do. We build single family homes. Now, whether or not he will choose to rent those versus sell them, I couldn't tell you what avenue he'll go with. He prefers to do senior housing. So he may do single units and then just rent them to seniors. But regardless, they would be single homes.
So the intention is something will be done regardless,
Yep.
right? We're not gonna,
It's either senior or either senior
either a
community.
center or individual units, okay? You wanna, okay.
Okay, specifically, what's your question, sir?
Okay, so there is it sounds like a variance or something that has to be done for the church to take the building. So if that fell through and for some weird reason, which it probably wouldn't, but if it didn't happen, what was your plan view with the building then at that point?
We don't have one.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've already spoken to the city, have already been told that the planner would write the report recommending that the exception, because we don't need a zone change. And one thing I just want to make sure is corrected, that was misstated. We also have no contingencies. It's not true that we have a contingency or an exception that has to be accepted. We're willing to purchase it outright, no contingencies.
Okay.
The likelihood, I would put it this way, the likelihood of somehow the city not allowing the exception they've allowed for years, that they actually made the intentions of by writing into their own code, is so unlikely that we are fully comfortable making this decision and moving forward with the purchase.
Sure. Yeah. And you're probably right. I'm more thinking of just, when we did this entire bond years, we had talked about, there's no way we'd let this place sit vacant and so I'm just thinking worst case, something happened, backup plan, what would it be? But that, thanks for.
Suppose we try to sell it.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
We find ourselves in the same shoes you guys are.
Okay.
Trying to sell it, but if we actually believed there was any chance of that happening, we wouldn't be making the offer we're making.
Okay, thank you. All right, Tina, you go ahead.
But enter into a contract, whoever it is in the bottom, with the offer, why do we care about it? I mean, other than they thing with the property and we agree to not let it sit there. I mean, they get the zoning, if they don't get the zoning, that really, does that happen there? I'm sorry, it's my first sell property, so I need that.
So if you see on here where it says no contingencies next to those offers, that means that they have nothing that would stop them from closing this deal. And we don't, they don't care whether they get it rezoned, if they need it rezoned. They don't care if they get the exception. So to your point, Tina, it's kind of not our concern if you're just looking at that piece.
So if you're looking at it, cross offers on the table, it's really not. And I know that this is gonna come out of code wrong, please don't turn it this way, it's not our problem if they don't get the zoning. Right, I mean, I want, because I don't know any other way to do it.
So Tina, I would agree with you, except for, the only thing I'm saying is that we did at one point say we would do everything we could to make sure it didn't sit. And I know we don't have control once we sell it. I'm just thinking that's why it's nice to know what's the worst that could, like, what's the backup plan if they can't do what they want to do? That's the only reason I was asking that.
And I totally
Yes,
understand
okay.
that, and I agree with you. We did say that we weren't gonna let the property sit and become a.
Sure.
blight on the neighborhood.
But you're right, it's not really, once it's sold, it's sold. Yeah.
I mean, that was my question, but, so I guess my other question would be, we always have, because at the same time, we agree to not let it sit there. We don't want to sell it, and it sit there for years before anybody does it. Right?
Well, we're required, not required, but the idea is to close in 30 days. I don't think you could put a requirement on them to build, occupy, or do something in particular within a certain amount of time, because after that point, after the sale, you're not the owner. Now, if you want to put something as a deed restriction, I guess you could try to do that, but I wouldn't recommend that. So there is some risk in this. And Heather and I have had this conversation before. There is some risk in this. And just to clarify, the contingency, like Burke pointed out, that's a contractual issue. That's not a city issue. When we talk about no contingencies, that's a contractual issue with each contract. So.
The other piece I will mention that in visiting with our legal counsel with Calvin Ryder, he asked for consideration to the board with that piece that as we're working through those very fine details of the final contract, and also if for some reason you wish to counter at all with one or two of it, is that the final contract that you would approve, the final contract is subject to the approval of superintendent and legal counsel. So he has reviewed these, but there are some things still he mentioned that could be minor changes in there.
So what you're saying is we need, in our motion, we just say we have to give Calvin the latitude to negotiate, is that what I heard?
Yeah, approval of superintendent and legal counsel for the final contract, which the amount would be, I mean, if you counter, then it'd be whatever that amount's changed to, or if you decide to keep. Right now, the highest offer that you guys have that is not finance contingent is the 189 cash offer for senior apartments, no contingencies. The next one would be the Well Worship Center, 59, no contingencies.
Okay. So, Tina, did you? So I'll just throw it out there. My intention, I'm not getting a motion yet, but my intention is that we take an offer like tonight, like we wrap this up tonight. I don't want to keep going back and forth. That's just my intention. I know you could counter if you want, but I'd rather just, we've been carrying this for a long time. So Tina, go ahead.
So I guess I'll be in agreement with that. I think that we need to make a decision. Clearly, what happens when we go back to because that didn't work in our favor. I don't know if y'all noticed that, but it didn't work very well.
We did have, if I can respond, we did have one really high one that we didn't know for sure, right?
Yeah,
twice as much, so
Yeah.
there was a little bit of a negative. So I do agree with
that. And I totally get the
But we
betting
didn't have
part
that.
as far as what they were going to do. I'm talking wide spot. I'm clearly that important.
Right.
Because we didn't get anything higher than what we had previously. And I guess I would just say, and I know I said it last meeting, and I'll go ahead and read it again. sometimes for me, I don't think they're the best offer is the highest offer. There's a lot of things that go into my factoring, and so for me, I'm not opposed to, you know, entertaining offers, but for me, I think I have a pretty clear direction where I have read these factors and like to see where this goes. So I'll leave that up to the rest of the board.
So, one thing, what's up? Okay, yeah, one quick thing. One thing I was looking at citywide is what is, just quick, research, Google and talking to folks. What is the need here in the city? What are we lacking? And it seems to be a common theme when you talk to even different folks, is there could be some lacking of housing. And is it senior housing? Is it housing in general? I don't know. So that's kind of one way to look at it. What could we fix the need, but with the awarding an offer? I mean, maybe we could. That's kind of the route I originally started. I mean, I don't know where it's going to end up, but I did look at, is there a way that by awarding this offer, we're gonna help solve a need that that the city has, not necessarily the district, but that's where I'm at. Andy, go ahead.
So are we, I guess, in agreement that it's probably down to the Schmader and Well Worship Center as far as the final figure?
That's where I'm at.
189, 150.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That, you guys, same thing? Okay.
I can't see the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're good. That's right.
Makes it a little easier, so I appreciate everybody else bidding and being part of this process. So, and so this is tough. I mean, Well Worship Center, you guys do great stuff in the community. Appreciate your ministry. It's awesome. We also have a need for housing in the community as well. And we got, from what I understand and some additional information we got since last meeting, we got an entity that has a plan for it. And that was one of our major concerns too, somebody that would sustain this place and keep it viable. So for me, when it comes down to, we almost have to weigh, I mean, unfortunately, there is a price difference as well. And so to be fair, to me, that seems like kind of how we have to end up. And as much as, I'd like the Well Worship Center to take on this building, I feel like kind of the fair way to do it, meeting the criteria of supporting the community. I think one of the things I talked about at the last meeting was in the 2040 plan for the city of Derby is specifically housing and the need for that. So I think we need that as well. I think we have a need for ministry in the community as well. So there's a need there. So you've got two very, I think, viable folks trying to buy it. And to me, we've got to make a decision. And I guess I would lean towards the senior apartments, again, given the higher bid amount. And I would see if they consider doing 212 as they originally offered. I think there was, had we had maybe a little bit additional information, that might have been a viable option at last meeting. So anyway, that's my take and kind of how I'm looking at it.
So, appreciate hearing if there's only housing. The only thing, I would agree with everything you said, that I was concerned about countering. That's kind of what got us into this trouble. I'd be more inclined to go ahead and just move forward with the offer as accepted. That's, again, I'm not making a motion, I'm just giving you my opinion right now. Trying to figure out how the board's going here. I don't want to get into a bidding deal and see unfair. The offers are given, and we give the latitude. Heather asked for legal, the same thing when we do make them. That's just.
So, I mean, is that something that she can answer or no? I mean, without going back in a formal offer, do you know where they're at? I mean, is that where they're at? Or is he willing to go back? Correct. Okay. Did you guys have any questions you want to throw out there while we're in the middle of this? I know, I just, there's not much else to ask at this point, so, yeah, I mean, well, I mean, so that's where I'm at. That's what I kind of said before. I'm hesitant. Thing is, she's right here, so it's going to be. So I don't honestly care so much. I mean, I don't want to carry this. I want to have an answer tonight, no matter what we do. I don't necessarily think we need to. So, okay, can we take action 7C and we'll come back to this one? Okay. Let's just help Stone Creek clear out their chairs real fast, and then we'll come back to this one in just a second. So let's move on to action item 7C, the Stone Creek Elementary chair purchase with Burke.
Hi, Burke Jones, Director of Operations. Tonight I bring to you a quote for elementary chairs. These are folding chairs essentially to be used during programs and that kind of thing. This purchase is for $400. One thing I will note is on the quote that I attached, it does include sales tax, so that we won't be paying the sales tax for that amount. This is being purchased under a purchasing contract and within budgeted bond funds for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And this is the last purchase we will make for Stone Creek. Out of the bond.
Forever?
Right.
Okay.
I'll stay for any questions.
So we got a motion and a second. Were there any questions on this one? Robin, was that your second? Pamela, sorry. Okay, so all those in favor? 6-0 on the chairs. Thank you, Burke. Okay, we're gonna roll back to item 7B again.
We do have an update of information with what you were asking. They have provided that they would, as long as you accepted and approved tonight, they will go back up to $212,000 for Pleasant View Elementary.
Hey, Matthew is going to make a motion, I believe. Go ahead, Matthew.
I move to approve.
You got to award the actual.
I move to approve the amended offer of 112.
212.
Or 212, excuse me, with the latitude for Calvin to make his negotiation, whatever he's got to do for legal, however that.
With Schroeder and stuff, yes. With the
Okay.
contract.
And someone seconded it on here. Pamela had a second on that. Were there any more last minute questions, comments? Tina, go ahead.
I mean, I guess it's totally, right now.
Trying to get you on.
If you're gonna give them the option of coming back, well, you give them the option of coming back again. I mean,
That's fine.
that's where I'm saying.
Go ahead.
Are we to the point now where it's just crazy. For me, I said before, the best offer is not always the biggest offer. I would the well thing cover because I think they have,
Okay.
I think it's a great thing for them for outreach. But I don't think senior apartments is or viable because I think they are. But I think to make it a partnership, somebody within your community and it being a church that we can go forward and have that partnership, then that's just my opinion. And I would do
Okay.
that.
So,
I guess the only comment would be, I mean, from the previous offer, 5 to 159, so even at the highest offer, so it's lower than what.
Oh, I get the money, I totally get the money part of it. What I'm saying is in fairness.
There-
Maybe that's where you should have had, in fairness, that, I don't know. I've never had to sell it.
okay. Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. Before we vote, just because it's what Tina had requested, is there anything you guys have you want to say on your offer?
No.
Okay. Okay, so with that being said, we will, were there more last minute questions, comments? No, okay, let's take a vote. We had a motion and a second to approve the offer at 212 for Schmader. All those in favor of that offer? Okay, 5-1, motion passes.
And just clarity on that again, you're okay with us working with a contractor?
Yes, yeah.
I just wanted to
Same
make sure
motion
that-
Matthew made, yep. Okay, we're gonna wrap up the meeting tonight, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn. What was that?
We'd like to take you on a tour.
Before we adjourn? Okay, sorry, never mind. We're gonna go to a tour first. We'll be back.
Yeah. I'm gonna just set it for you.